A thunderous crash echoed through the opulent concert hall just as Aria Larson dropped breathlessly into the plush velvet chair. Her pulse pounded violently, a fierce drumbeat against her rib cage, still racing from narrowly avoiding a collision with a waiter carrying a precariously balanced tray of champagne flutes. Amidst whispered apologies and muffled gasps from the startled crowd, Arya stared wide-eyed at the stage, realizing just how impossibly close she was. Front row, dead center. How had she managed to score such a seat, one people would typically pay a small fortune to secure? It had to be a mistake. Her ticket, creased in her sweaty palm, clearly indicated row A, seat 14, but even as the auditorium lights began to dim, an uneasy suspicion knotted in her stomach. Before she could fully catch her breath, a deep, resonant voice sliced through the darkness beside her. "You're in my seat." The words weren't aggressive, but their sheer authority sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. Turning slowly, her eyes collided with a pair of icy steel-gray irises that gleamed sharply beneath the low lights. Towering over her was a man whose presence alone commanded attention. Impeccably tailored, dressed head to toe in an effortlessly elegant charcoal suit, he exuded a restrained power, hinting at a lifestyle well beyond anything she'd ever known. Arya's mouth went dry. Her heart skipped and stumbled, partly from embarrassment, partly from something else entirely. I, I think there's been a misunderstanding," she whispered nervously, already fumbling to locate her own ticket. She felt the eyes of curious concert-goers shift toward them as an usher hurriedly approached, nearly stumbling in her haste. "Oh my goodness, Mr. Ellis," the usher stammered, eyes wide in panic. "I'm so sorry. There must have been an oversight." Recognition flashed through Arya's mind. Ellis. The name struck a chord. Dorian Ellis. She'd glimpsed him before, splashed across magazine covers, labeled as the millionaire investor reshaping the city. A cold wash of dread surged through her veins. Of all seats, she'd mistakenly claimed his? Dorian Ellis studied her briefly, his expression unreadable. Instead of having her removed, however, he did something utterly unexpected. He raised a single eyebrow, gesturing subtly with one graceful hand for her to remain seated. Arya hesitated, confusion warring with relief, but before she could move, the lights plunged fully into darkness, leaving her trapped beside him as the first haunting strains of the violin pierced the charged silence. Pulse racing, she forced her gaze back toward the stage, keenly aware of the magnetic stranger beside her. Why would a man like Dorian Ellis allow her, someone clearly out of place, to remain next to him when he could have easily demanded she leave? Drop a quick "I'll be low" if this suspenseful start has you hooked already, or if you're guessing Dorian's motive. The concert soared toward its climatic finale. Arya felt each note vibrating through her ribcage. It had been years since she allowed herself the luxury of live music, and every second here was pure magic. However, she couldn't ignore the magnetic presence at her side. With the final note reverberating into silence, the audience rose for a standing ovation. Arya clapped vigorously, turning toward Dorian Ellis, partly out of curiosity, partly out of gratitude for not ejecting her. Her eyes locked on his profile, strong jaw, eyes of a subdued slate hue, and an air of self-possession that left her breathless. She opened her mouth to speak, but the crowd's thunderous applause drowned out her words. Then, as if on cue, he leaned in close, the subtle cologne on his collar making her stomach flutter. "Did you enjoy the performance?" he asked. His tone was polite, but there was curiosity laced in it. Arya swallowed. "Yes, very much. I've wanted to see them for ages." He studied her a moment, as though verifying her sincerity. "You saved for a ticket, didn't you?" he guessed softly, reading the slight wear on her heels and the older model phone peeking out of her purse. Arya stiffened, simultaneously mortified and intrigued by how he seemed to grasp her situation with just a look. Still, there was no condescension in his gaze, only a sort of sympathy she wasn't prepared to handle. An usher glided toward them, bowing slightly in Dorian's direction. "Mr. Ellis, your private lounge is prepared upstairs whenever you're ready," she murmured. Before Arya could protest, Dorian's fingers gently touched her elbow, a barely there hint of contact. "Join me for a drink," he said, making it more of a statement than a request. Her first instinct was to refuse. This entire scenario, mistaken seat, mysterious millionaire, and an invitation to some exclusive post-concert lounge, sounded like a whirlwind of questionable choices. But she found her feet following him up the ornate stairwell anyway, her pulse pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She told herself she was only going to say thank you, maybe have one polite sip, and then part ways. The lounge was dimly lit, and its gilded paneling glowed under soft chandeliers. In the corner, a refined bar with backlit shelves displayed top-shelf bottles that likely cost more than her monthly rent. Dorian guided her to a secluded banquette, sliding in across from her. At some point, a waiter produced 2 glasses of a deep amber whiskey, though Arya never saw him approach. "Arya, is it?" Dorian asked, glancing at the concert ticket she'd been clutching. "Yes," she admitted, voice shaking almost imperceptibly. "Arya Larson?" "Dorian Ellis," he said, though she hardly needed an introduction. Pause for a moment, drop a quick comment 3 if you suspect there's more to Dorian's motives than meets the eye, or comment 4 if you think Arya's the one holding the bigger secret. They sipped their drinks amidst the hush of the lounge, music drifting from hidden speakers. Curiosity sparked between them like static electricity. Every time Arya lifted her gaze, she found Dorian studying her over the rim of his glass. A question formed on her lips, the one she'd been itching to ask. Why had he let her stay in that seat? Before she could gather the nerve to speak, he set his drink down gently. "Tell me something," he began, folding his hands together on the table. "Why did that concert mean so much to you?" Arya tapped a nervous finger against the base of her glass. "Music has always been an escape," she admitted. "I used to play the piano, dreamt of going professional, but life had other plans. Bills, a job. So I saved up for this performance because it felt like reclaiming a piece of what I lost." Dorian's eyes flickered. If she wasn't mistaken, a shadow of empathy passed across his expression. "You gave it up," she shrugged, forcing a wry smile. "When you're working 60 hours a week, you make choices." The silence that followed was heavier than Arya expected. Then Dorian gestured for the waiter to top off their glasses. "It's a shame," he said, voice lower. "Those who truly understand the power of music shouldn't let it slip away." A pang ran through Arya's chest. It felt dangerously intimate to have someone see that longing inside her, especially someone she'd known for mere hours. A swirl of conflicting thoughts churned. Gratitude for his attentiveness. Worry that this was too sudden, too intense. "I doubt I'll ever be on stage," she said, more to fill the silence than anything. "There's a difference between loving something and being good enough for it." Dorian leaned forward, the overhead lighting casting sharp angles across his face. "Anyone who dedicates themselves to something they love can become extraordinary. You were extraordinary tonight. Your focus, your passion, it radiated off you. That's why I didn't make you move." She opened her mouth, but the words stuck. Had anyone ever spoken to her like that? A frantic pulse beat in her neck. She barely managed to whisper, "And you? Why were you at the concert?" For a moment, a muscle in his jaw tightened. "I appreciate the arts." He seemed ready to say more, but caught himself and took a measured sip of whiskey instead. They sat like that for a long moment, an electric current humming between them. Then he said, as if deciding something in that instant, "I have a piano, in my penthouse." Arya's brow rose. "Fancy that." He quirked a hint of a grin, all composed confidence. "Come by, play it. Remind yourself of what you love." Is this heading toward a fairy tale or a train wreck? Share a quick thought below, fairy tale or train wreck. I'm curious which you predict. Stepping into Dorian Ellis's penthouse the following night felt like wandering onto an opulent movie set. Arya's senses reeled at the sleek, modern design that somehow avoided being cold. Neutral palettes accented by deep blues, softly glowing recessed lights, artful sculpture pieces seamlessly integrated into corners, and windows so tall they reached into the city's nighttime skyline. And in the center of the living room, a grand piano stood beneath a subtle spotlight, as though waiting for her. Dorian had greeted her downstairs in the private lobby, a place with marble floors and abstract paintings that probably had six-figure price tags. He'd ushered her into the elevator with a courteous yet subdued smile. Now he stood by, letting her soak in the scale of his home. I know it's a lot, he murmured, setting down the two takeaway lattes they'd carried in. I tend to forget how overwhelming it can be. It's breathtaking, Arya said softly, her gaze drifting to the piano. She couldn't help it. Her pulse fluttered at the thought of pressing those keys again. The polished ebony shimmered under the overhead lighting. Memories of old recitals, the smell of sheet music, the tingle of nerves before a performance. Everything rushed back. With measured steps, she approached the instrument. Her fingertips hovered just above the keys. This must be worth a fortune, she said, almost a whisper, afraid her voice might echo in the cavernous space. Dorian joined her side. It was custom-made, he admitted. Care to try it? His invitation felt like a dare. Carefully, Arya settled onto the bench. Her hands trembled. It had been years since she truly played. One note, then another. A halting melody of muscle memory. The sound was full and warm, resounding in the penthouse's high ceilings. After a moment, she closed her eyes, letting her fingers dance. The piece took shape, an old composition she used to love. She lost herself in the swirl of notes, forgetting everything else. When the final chord faded, an unexpected emotion welled up in her. I'd forgotten, she whispered, swallowing back tears. Forgotten how it makes me feel. Dorian's voice cut gently through the afterglow. That's exactly why you should never stop. She glanced over to find his expression thoughtful, if a bit guarded. And in that instant, she sensed something else behind his eyes. A longing not so different from her own, veiled by the practiced composure of a man used to controlling every aspect of his life. Would you give up a safe routine to chase a forgotten passion? Let's see a quick yes or no way in the comments. Over the next few weeks, Arya found herself drawn into a rhythm both exhilarating and terrifying. By day, she continued her marketing job, a mundane grind of morning commutes, deadlines, and conference calls. By night, she slipped into Dorian's rarefied world. They tested fine whiskeys in softly lit lounges, attended private showings at art galleries, and strolled through rooftop gardens that overlooked the sparkling city. Each time, she learned a little more about him, how he'd built his fortune through strategic investments, how he wore the label of relentless as if it were a badge of honor, and how everyone seemed to tiptoe around him, half in admiration, half in fear. Yet in small corners of time, he let down his guard. He'd show her old vinyl records, sharing obscure jazz pieces he adored. He'd casually ask about her childhood, hearing every detail from the day her grandmother taught her the first piano scale to the night she'd sold her keyboard for rent money. Arya was unprepared for the wave of encouragement that followed. That's why I have this piano, he'd say, so you never have to let it go again. Still, she couldn't fully dispel a nagging sense that this life was too big, too gilded for her. She found herself scanning Dorian's penthouse, taking in the swirl of city lights beyond the glass. Could someone like her truly fit here without losing who she was? Did Dorian even realize how precarious this all seemed to someone outside his luxurious bubble? One evening, they ended up side by side on his immaculate balcony, city lights shimmering below like an earthbound galaxy. She asked the question dancing on her lips. Why did you let me stay in your seat that night, Dorian? His brow knit slightly. Honestly, you looked determined, like you'd fought to get there. I recognized that determination. You reminded me of myself before I made it big, when I still believed in fighting tooth and nail for every dream. Arya's heart clenched. But I can't shake the fear that I'm an intruder in a world that doesn't quite belong to me. He slid a hand along hers, lacing their fingers. You say that as if you don't deserve the same shot at living fully, Arya. A breeze ruffled his neatly styled hair, and for a second he looked vulnerable, illuminated by moonlight. I've spent my entire adulthood building walls, forging deals, and making sure no one could topple my empire. But you just want to play the piano without everything else getting in the way. In that fragile hush of the night, Arya realized something. She saw a reflection of her own hidden pain in Dorian's eyes. Two travelers, both uncertain if they could trust in something beyond their own defenses. Loving this vulnerability. Tap 1 if you think they'll heal each other, or 2 if you sense conflict brewing on the horizon. Tension arrived in the form of an unexpected visitor. Late one afternoon, Arya wrapped up her shift and made her way to Dorian's penthouse. She was met by a neatly dressed older woman standing in the lobby, apparently waiting. The woman fixed sharp, assessing eyes on Arya the moment she stepped out of the elevator. "You must be Miss Larson," she said coolly. "I'm Eveline Ellis, Dorian's mother." Arya's nerves prickled. She extended a hand, trying to keep her composure. "Pleasure to meet you." Eveline eyed her hand before taking it with a smile too polite to be warm. "I've been hoping to catch you. It seems you and my son have been spending quite a bit of time together." Alarm bells rang in Arya's head. She managed a nod. "Yes, we have." "That's good, I suppose," Eveline remarked, her tone teetering between civility and condescension. "Though I'm curious, a woman like you, excuse me, I mean someone with your background, does it not feel overwhelming to keep up with my son's lifestyle?" Arya flushed. "Overwhelming is one word for it," she replied, leveling her shoulders. "But that doesn't mean I don't belong." "Ah," Eveline murmured, giving her a slow once-over. "Confidence is nice, but let's be pragmatic. My son's circle is particular." She paused, then pinned Arya with a stare that made her want to shrink away. "I'd hate for Dorian's generosity to be taken advantage of by a starry-eyed dreamer." Arya's blood ran hot, but she forced a calm exterior. "I care about your son. I'm not here for his money or anything else." Eveline's expression softened just a fraction, as if she'd gleaned the honesty in Arya's voice. Yet she didn't relent. "I built an empire of philanthropic ventures, dear, and I've seen countless sob stories. I only want what's best for Dorian. I'm sure you understand." Before Arya could respond, the elevator chimed. Dorian emerged, posture instantly alert when he caught sight of his mother and Arya in tense conversation. "Mother?" he asked, voice taut. "Why are you here unannounced?" Eveline offered him a gracious, if tight, smile. "Just checking on you, darling, and meeting this charming young lady you've taken under your wing." Arya stiffened at the phrasing, but Dorian casually stepped between them, slipping an arm around Arya's waist. "I see," he said, his tone carrying a silent warning. Eveline's gaze lingered on their closeness. "We'll speak soon, Dorian." She turned to Arya, nodded politely, and then strode out, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Arya's heart hammered. She wondered if Dorian sensed the tremble in her body. "She's protective," Arya managed. "Overbearing," he corrected, tightening his arm around her. "I'm sorry." In that moment, Arya understood that intruders weren't always from the outside world. Sometimes they emerged from your lover's past, forces determined to preserve the status quo. Think Arya can stand strong against family pressure? Leave a quick yes below if you believe she can, or no if you foresee heartbreak. Despite his mother's brief but ominous appearance, Dorian seemed determined to push forward. That evening, to wash away the tension, he and Arya decided on a small dinner date, a cozy bistro tucked in a quiet neighborhood. Flickering candles on each table, an unobtrusive jazz trio playing at the back, and simple brick walls gave the place a homey charm. Arya let out a sigh of relief as she settled in. Here, away from the glitz and pressure, she could breathe. "Don't let her get to you," Dorian said, reaching across the table to link his fingers with hers. "My mother is—" He paused, letting the admission hang. "Controlling." Arya nodded. "I gathered, but it doesn't mean she's wrong to worry about me." She mustered a small smile, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am out of my depth." He squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out together." For a moment, they fell into an easy conversation about more personal topics. Favorite childhood memories, worst fears, the kind of embarrassing anecdotes you'd only confide in someone you truly trusted. Arya confessed the time she froze during a middle school recital, unable to play a single note, until her teacher whispered a start in her ear. Dorian chuckled, sharing how he'd once gotten hopelessly lost on a business trip in Tokyo, but pretended otherwise for hours to save face in front of associates. By dessert, a luscious creme brulee, tension had all but melted. Arya traced the back of Dorian's hand with her thumb, marveling at how quickly he had become an essential fixture in her life. Yet beneath the soft glow of the bistro lights, she couldn't shake the memory of Eveline's scrutiny. What if Dorian's mother wasn't the only person who might disapprove of them? How would Arya's own circle react if she revealed she was falling for a wealthy man so far beyond her usual realm? Would they accuse her of chasing money or question her motives just as Eveline had? When they finished eating, Dorian stood and, in a gentlemanly gesture, helped Arya slip on her coat. The outside air was cool, the city lights twinkling overhead, and the gentle hum of cars lulled them into a comfortable silence. She looped her arm through his. "Let's not worry," Dorian said softly, as though reading her mind. "If either of us panics, we'll tackle that panic together. Deal?" Arya's stomach fluttered. "Deal," she whispered back. A giggle escaped her lips when he bent down, pressing a discreet kiss to her temple, his breath warm in the crisp night. If you've ever faced a meddling family member, comment 5, or type 6 if you think love always wins in the end. The following Saturday, while Arya practiced on Dorian's piano, she found him in tense conversation on the phone by the window. His normally controlled voice sounded clipped, almost angry, as he ended the call. Concern welled up. She closed the piano lid gently. "Everything okay?" she ventured, walking over. The vantage point revealed a stormy expression she'd never seen before. He exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. "Remember how I said there were pitfalls to success? Well, one is that people are always trying to knock you down." "What happened?" "A business partner I trusted might have leaked privileged information. It's about to cost me, possibly millions." His jaw tensed as he gazed at her. "Feels like betrayal, but it's also par for the course." Arya reached for his hand. "Is there any way I can help?" His eyes flickered with something raw. "This is where I'm supposed to say no, stay out of it. But I'm too tired to pretend. I could use a distraction. I could use—" His voice trailed off, heavy with words unspoken. Without hesitation, she guided him over to the piano, nudging him to sit beside her on the bench. "Remember the first time I played for you? You told me it was what I was meant to do." Her own heart hammered as she placed her fingers on the keys. "So let me remind you that some things, some people, are worth trusting." A gentle melody filled the penthouse, soft notes weaving a balm against the tension in Dorian's posture. She didn't play anything complex, just a series of chords that rose and fell like a lullaby. Slowly, she felt him relax at her side. When she finished, the last note quivered in the quiet. He said nothing at first, but his gaze told her everything. Appreciation, relief, a glimmer of that guarded heart cracking open. "Arya," he murmured finally, "I could listen to you forever." A flush crept to her cheeks. Dorian lifted her hand from the keys, pressing a light kiss to her knuckles. The gesture felt oddly chivalrous, reminiscent of another era, yet wholly natural to him. In that moment, the weight of his world, contracts, board meetings, legal issues, felt overshadowed by the simple chord progression that lingered in the air. She realized with a swift and dizzying clarity she wanted to be more than just a comforting presence. She wanted to stand by him, face those betrayals and triumphs, let him inside her own vulnerabilities too. Where are you tuning in from tonight? Share your city or country below. This story's global, and I'd love to know how far it's traveled. When Evelyn Ellis made her second unannounced entrance, Arya braced herself. This time, the older woman arrived dressed in a tailored suit that exuded wealth and authority. Arya was finishing a morning practice session at the piano. Dorian had just stepped out for a meeting, leaving her alone in the penthouse. Evelyn wasted no time. "Good morning, Miss Larson," she greeted. Her polite tone did little to mask the critical edge. "I suppose you're keeping busy?" Arya rose from the bench, smoothing her blouse. "I am, though Dorian's not here if you're looking for him." Evelyn's eyes flitted around the penthouse. "I'm here to see you, actually. Figured we could have a chat, woman to woman." A tremor of apprehension darted through Arya's spine, but she forced a calm nod. "Would you like some coffee?" "That would be lovely," Evelyn responded. She settled on the sofa with the poise of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms. As Arya handed her a fresh cup, Evelyn locked gazes. "I understand you have musical talent. That's charming." Arya bit back a sharp retort. "I love playing, yes." Evelyn took a delicate sip. "So, my son is enthralled by you and your music. But let's face reality. The kind of life Dorian leads is demanding. He's forging deals across continents. Soon he'll be at the center of philanthropic events, working with top CEOs and politicians." She set her cup down. "Where do you see yourself in that picture?" Arya inhaled slowly. By his side if he'll have me. A brittle half-smile curved on Eveline's lips. You're straightforward, admirable. But tell me this, are you prepared to manage the rumors, the gossip? To be painted as the starry-eyed woman who snared a millionaire? You will face people who assume you're with him only for status or that you're a fleeting novelty. She paused, her gaze unyielding. Dorian can be closed off, but he's vulnerable in ways few understand. If you hurt him, intentionally or not, you will lose far more than a comfortable lifestyle. You'll shatter the one fragile aspect of him that remains human. Arya's stomach churned. She recognized a mother's harsh protective streak, yet it felt like a test. Dare she reveal her insecurities? Dare she defend her own convictions? I don't intend to hurt him, Arya managed, voice steady despite her thumping heart. He matters to me more than you can know. Silence thickened between them, punctuated by the faint hum of the penthouse's climate control. Eveline pressed her lips together, as though weighing Arya's response. Finally, she stood. Keep that in mind, she said, collecting her elegant purse. And be mindful of your place, Ms. Larson. Drop a 7 in the chat if you think Eveline's sternness is warranted, or 8 if you think she's overstepping. Arya relayed the conversation to Dorian later that evening. They sat across from each other in the living area, the skyline flickering with a million city lights. His reaction was anything but mild. Fury tightened his mouth and his fist clenched on the armrest. I should have known, he muttered. Mother's never been subtle, but confronting you alone, she's crossed a line. Arya reached out, resting a hand on his arm. Don't hold it against her, Dorian. She's protecting you the only way she knows. He shook his head. She's driving you away. And I don't want that. His steel gray eyes locked onto hers, brimming with a fervor that made her chest ache. I don't want you to doubt yourself or us. Uncertain emotion flickered inside Arya. She recalled Eveline's words, if you hurt him, intentionally or not, you'll shatter him. Could she really handle this world, with all its judgments and pressures? Would her own insecurities eventually hurt Dorian anyway? But then he pulled her gently into his arms, his breath warm on her hair. I won't let her words sabotage what we have, he vowed. Promise me you'll stay. In that moment, it felt so simple, to say yes and nestle into his protective embrace. Yet she knew real life wasn't so simple. They were two individuals with past burdens and uncertain futures. But for now, she let herself trust him. Trust them. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered against his collar, heart hammering at how deeply she meant it. They drew apart, and the storm in his eyes receded. Instead, a gentle smile curved on his lips. Thank you. Later, with the lights low, Arya slid onto the piano bench. Dorian stood nearby, leaning against the wall, watching her. She played a new melody that spoke of longing and quiet resolve, layering the high notes softly over a resonant bass line. With each chord, her soul poured out in ways she couldn't express verbally. When she finished, the hush in the penthouse felt charged with possibility. Dorian crossed the room, cupping her face in his hands. You always amaze me, he breathed. And before she could protest that she was just an amateur who'd been out of practice for years, he kissed her, gentle yet insistent, like he needed to show her exactly how he felt. If that kiss made your heart flutter, type below. A new wave of conflict arrived one weekend when Arya received a tearful voicemail from her sister, Laurel. I'm behind on rent, Laurel confessed. I know you've been working so hard, but do you have anything to spare? Guilt racked Arya as she listened. She'd tried to save each month to keep them both afloat, but ever since diving into this budding relationship with Dorian, late dinners, short travels, and the countless new experiences, her finances had grown precarious. Feeling the weight of responsibility, Arya confronted her reality. She juggled credit card bills and her marketing paycheck. She eyed her monthly budget and realized how extravagantly she'd been living by proxy. Granted, Dorian footed many of the bills, but hidden expenses still cropped up. Taxis, professional outfits so she wouldn't look out of place among his associates, gifts she felt obligated to bring to certain gatherings. In a moment of spiraling panic, she wondered if Eveline was right. Did she belong here? Or was she simply stretching beyond her means for a dream that was never truly hers? She locked herself in the spare bedroom that served as a study at Dorian's penthouse. burying herself in financial spreadsheets. Hours passed. When Dorian found her, eyes red-rimmed from stress, he asked calmly, "What's wrong?" She braced herself, feeling oddly embarrassed. "It's my sister. She's in trouble and I've got to help." She paused, nails digging into her palm. "And I'm not sure I can." An unreadable expression crossed Dorian's face. Then he knelt beside her chair. "Let me help, then." Her immediate instinct was to refuse. "I can't take your money. This is my responsibility. My family." He exhaled, frustration tinging his voice. "Arya, you've never asked me for anything. Ever. Why is it so hard to let me support you now?" Tears threatened. "Because I want to stand on my own 2 feet. I don't want you or anyone to think I'm with you for a handout." He placed a gentle hand on her arm. "I get that. But do you think so little of me that you can't accept help when it's meant sincerely? This isn't a bribe or hush money. It's me, caring about you and your family." Her chest tightened. She blinked away tears, recalling her childhood days of always scrounging for the next bill. It felt both comforting and terrifying that someone like Dorian would share his resources so freely. Ever had a pride versus practicality moment? Drop a 9 if you have, or 10 if you'd let someone help you in a pinch? Ultimately, she allowed him to provide a stopgap measure. A small loan, as Dorian framed it, a bridging solution so Laurel could stay afloat. Arya promised to pay him back in installments. Dorian only shrugged with a quiet smile that suggested he'd never expect repayment. Tension still crackled, but for the moment, the crisis was averted. Soon after, Arya found an unexpected envelope in the penthouse mailbox addressed to her. Inside was a short note from Evelyn Ellis, along with a glossy pamphlet for a prestigious music conservatory. "If you insist on pursuing this passion, at least do it properly," the note read. "Dorian has connections with the Board of Trustees." Anger flared within Arya. Was this a backhanded attempt to shape her into someone acceptable for Dorian's world? Or, ironically, was it a twisted form of support? She tucked the pamphlet in a drawer, unwilling to decide how to feel about it. In the meantime, Dorian wrestled with increasing corporate chaos. Someone in his inner circle had indeed leaked crucial data, and legal battles were brewing. He seemed more stressed by the day, sleepless nights spent on the phone with lawyers, or in urgent meetings at obscure hours. Arya watched the shadows deepen under his eyes, and her heart ached at her inability to fix it. One night, he returned from the office after midnight, tie loosened, hair disheveled, looked like a man on the brink. Arya served him a cup of chamomile tea, forcing him to sit. Then, with the single lamp on in the living room, she stroked his hair softly as he rested his head on her lap. "You don't have to solve everything alone," she whispered. His voice was hoarse. "I've always solved things alone." She recognized the vulnerability. This wasn't just about the immediate problem. It was a lifetime of burdens, culminating in that moment. A man trained to be self-reliant, to never ask for help, to remain unyielding. She bent down, pressing a light kiss to his temple. "Let me share it, even if all I can do is listen." He closed his eyes, exhaling a breath that trembled. Then, in a quiet admission that shattered her heart, he whispered, "I'm afraid. Afraid everything I've built will come crashing down." Arya's chest constricted. She tightened her hold around him, letting him feel the warmth of her presence. "You're not alone anymore," she murmured, hoping that promise would grant him the comfort he desperately needed. Comment 11, if you've ever carried a burden you felt no one else could shoulder, or 12, if you believe sharing struggles always helps. As the weeks rolled on, sparks of harmony mingled with undercurrents of conflict, creating a strange dance in Arya's life. She discovered fresh joys in re-exploring her music, even scheduling a small audition at a local jazz lounge to see if she could play a set there once a month. Meanwhile, Dorian brokered deals and locked down the source of the internal leak, which turned out to be a longtime associate who'd sold information to a competitor. The betrayal stung, but through every twist, Arya remained by his side, sometimes just providing quiet support, other times challenging him to see beyond anger and retribution. On a clear evening, Dorian escorted Arya to a dazzling charity gala. It was the first time she'd be in public with him in such a high-profile setting. Clad in a modest but elegant gown she borrowed from a designer friend, Arya felt every stare the moment they walked in arm. Whispers trailed them, speculation about who she was. But Dorian stood tall, unwaveringly proud to have her beside him. Halfway through the night, they found themselves on a terrace overlooking a manicured garden. Soft laughter and the clink of champagne glasses floated from the ballroom. Dorian stared out at the starlit sky, his posture relaxed yet somehow contained. She slid an arm around his waist, hoping to ground him in the moment. "You're always thinking," she teased. He offered a lopsided smile. "Thinking about how drastically my life changed from that night in the concert hall. How I never expected a random seat mix-up to lead me here." Arya's heart glowed. Fate, coincidence, or both. "I'm just glad it happened." The sincerity in her voice earned her a soft kiss on the cheek. However, the moment broke when a stern presence loomed behind them. Evelyn had approached, her diamond necklace catching the terrace light. She looked between them with a faint purse of her lips. "I see you've both settled in nicely," she remarked, crossing her arms. Her gaze flickered with an emotion Arya couldn't quite place. Resignation, or perhaps grudging acceptance. "I hope you're ready, Arya, for the next level of scrutiny. The more serious you and Dorian become, the more the world will talk." Dorian shot his mother a warning glance, but Evelyn continued. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm ensuring you're both aware that an engagement, for instance, would thrust you into a public eye far beyond some local gossip. Are you prepared for that?" Arya's throat tightened. Engagement? She couldn't form words, so Dorian interceded gently. "Mother, we're not at that stage yet." Evelyn nodded curtly. "If you say so. But these events have a way of accelerating themselves. Just be sure you understand the magnitude." With that, she pivoted back into the ballroom, leaving Arya and Dorian under the starry sky, the faint swirl of possibility hanging in the air. Type 13 below if you sense that proposal vibes are near, or 14 if you suspect an explosive conflict before any wedding bells. In the weeks that followed, Arya found her jazz lounge audition a thrilling success, enough so that they offered her a once-a-month slot. The pay wasn't much, but it felt like an anchor to her own identity, a confirmation that music could be more than a hobby or a memory. Dorian was elated, showering her with congratulatory kisses, and even gifting her a rare vintage sheet music collection to celebrate. Yet success and happiness do not arrive without friction. Rumors began circulating. Tabloids speculated about the mystery woman spotted on Dorian Ellis's arm at high-profile functions. Some headlines hinted that Arya was only a fling, others that she was an opportunist. The mild coverage might have gone unnoticed if not for the snide remarks that accompanied it. Cruel insinuations about her background, her finances. Arya tried to keep a brave face, but one morning she found a particularly vicious tabloid piece that labeled her the gold digger with a piano. She retreated into herself, second-guessing every public appearance, worrying about how it would reflect on Dorian. He, meanwhile, grew livid, threatening legal action against outlets spreading blatant lies. In private, he reassured her, "They don't define us. People always talk, especially when they see two individuals from different worlds." Still, Arya's insecurities flared. She recalled her conversation with Evelyn, the idea that the deeper Arya got involved, the more the world would pry. Had they come to the limit of how far this romance could go without fracturing under external pressure? One crisp evening, after Arya's debut set at the Jazz Lounge, an emotional performance that ended in rousing applause, Dorian waited in a private booth. He'd watched, face aglow with pride. When she joined him, breathless and exhilarated, he embraced her. "I'll never get tired of hearing you play," he whispered against her ear. "Never." She clung to him, half laughing, half emotional from the night's triumph. But then she caught sight of a man in a corner, snapping photos, no doubt for some gossip column. Anxiety jolted her. Would tomorrow's headline be about the unlikely girlfriend punching above her weight? As if sensing her tension, Dorian turned her to face him. "Arya," he said quietly, "look at me, just me. Let them chatter. I need you to focus on us. What's true in this moment?" She tried, truly, but a pit of worry clung to her stomach, the echo of that humiliating headline swirling in her thoughts. Were they strong enough to endure? Hit 15 if you think the world's chatter won't matter, or 16 if you think it could tear them apart. That pit of worry threatened to swallow Arya. Until the evening, Dorian insisted they go for a stroll through a secluded botanical garden on the edge of the city. The place was lit by soft lanterns at dusk, transforming the pathways into an ethereal wonderland of glowing petals and star-shaped lights. They walked hand in hand, the hush of night weaving a cocoon around them. At a quiet clearing, where fragrant blossoms formed a natural arch, Dorian paused. Gently, he turned Arya to face him. "Do you trust me?" he asked, voice trembling ever so slightly. She blinked, her heart pounding. "With everything." He took a slow breath. "I don't pretend to know the future. I only know that every time I see you at that piano, or watch you fight for what you believe in, or comfort me when I'm at my lowest, I realize how empty my life would be without you." His hand slipped into his pocket and Arya felt her pulse skyrocket. When Dorian knelt on one knee, the garden lights reflecting in his eyes like tiny galaxies, Arya could barely breathe. He produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the lantern glow. "I can't promise we won't face more obstacles. My mother's skepticism, the tabloids, the swirl of rumors. But I can promise you this. I will stand by you and your music, your passion, and every dream you dare to resurrect. I love you, Arya Larson. Will you marry me?" In the hush of the garden, tears spilled down Arya's cheeks. She recalled that first mistaken seat at the concert hall, the simple moment she'd slipped into a spot that wasn't supposed to be hers, and how it changed everything. She thought of her own fears, Eveline's cold warnings, the fiery swirl of speculation. None of it mattered in that moment as much as the sincerity in Dorian's eyes. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling with equal parts awe and certainty. "Yes, 1,000 times." A radiant smile lit his face. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to kiss her under the soft lantern glow. The garden seemed to hold its breath, as if celebrating the vow they just made. And when she wrapped her arms around his neck, she felt their hearts pulsing in unison. Two individuals from different worlds, forging a single path together, no matter what came next. If you've read all the way here, you're a legend. Comment, "I do." Now to celebrate their engagement and share your final thoughts on their journey.
Wife was pregnant and alone, while the millionaire spent nights with his mistress. Emily Thompson's world shattered in a single evening. Pregnant, exhausted, and lonely, she stood by the balcony window of her once happy home, watching the city lights fade into night. Her husband, James Thompson, an influential millionaire adored by gossip columns, hadn't come home again. Rumors swirled about his mysterious companion at exclusive clubs and five-star restaurants. But Emily needed no rumors. She sensed the betrayal. With her hand resting protectively on her growing belly, she recalled a time when James promised her the universe. Now she was left facing her darkest fears alone. This is the story of secrets, heartbreak, and a fight for redemption. Emily Thompson had once believed she was living in a fairy tale. In the early days of her marriage, the world sparkled with possibility. She and James Thompson, the dashing and well-known millionaire entrepreneur, seemed destined for a life of glamour and delight. Their relationship had all the hallmarks of a modern romance. A chance meeting at an upscale charity gala, a whirlwind courtship that defied reason, and a wedding celebrated in the sun-soaked gardens of a lakeside mansion. For years, paparazzi followed Emily wherever she went, as they deemed the couple too glamorous to ignore. Emily, however, remained grounded. She grew up in a modest home in suburban Chicago, raised by her mother, Patricia Mills. After her father passed away when Emily was only 6, Emily understood the value of hard work and caution. Yet from the moment she met James, his confidence and gentle charm awakened in her a capacity for hope she never knew she had. She prayed these new heights in her life would never come crashing down. James, on the other hand, exuded the exact brand of confidence many found irresistible. Tall, with dark hair slicked back in a timeless style, he was as captivating as he was ambitious. As the founder of Thompson Innovations, an umbrella corporation with interests in technology, fashion, and real estate, James had cemented himself among the elite. Media outlets adored his success story, an orphan raised by his widowed father, Harold Thompson, who instilled in James the relentless drive to succeed. At times, Emily mused that perhaps James drew so much from heartbreak and adversity that, by the time she met him, his passion for success bordered on obsession. And yet, in those early days, that obsession was not a problem. They were two people in love, brimming with ideals and big plans. Emily's background in philanthropic work felt like a natural fit for James, who had an earnest longing to give back to society. Together, they launched charity events that benefited shelters, educational programs, and medical research. Society pages lauded them as the perfect couple, beautiful, gracious, and clearly in love. But as the years progressed, James's devotion to success began overshadowing everything else. Emily, ever the supportive partner, watched as James devoted more hours to forging deals with overseas investors, negotiating brand expansions, and growing the corporate empire. She told herself that sacrifices were normal in any marriage. After all, their wealth and influence opened doors that allowed them to help countless people in need. If James was occasionally absent, it was for a good cause, or so Emily believed. Meanwhile, she poured her heart into philanthropic work, continuing to champion the same ideals that once united them. When Emily learned she was pregnant, she imagined it might offer them a chance to reconnect on a deeper level. The idea of building a family, a strong and stable unit, was something Emily always cherished. For James, however, fatherhood became another item on a very crowded to-do list. He seemed happy in theory, but grew restless whenever discussions of the baby came up. Over time, as her pregnancy advanced, the rift between them widened. In public, Emily kept a radiant smile and politely nodded at any questions. To the outside world, she was the enviable Miss S. Thompson, philanthropic sweetheart, soon-to-be mother and queen of James's empire. In reality, she became more of a spectator of her own life, waiting in an expansive mansion on the outskirts of the city. Each day, James came home later, or sometimes not at all, always with new deals, new cocktails with potential partners, or urgent matters that couldn't wait. Emily's loneliness grew sharper with each missed dinner. She would lie awake, hand on her swelling belly, waiting for the click of the front door. More often than not, she was left counting the minutes until dawn. And it was during one of those sleepless nights, just shy of her third trimester, that she felt the first inkling of suspicion about another woman. Her hand involuntarily clenched the thin sheet atop her bed as her intuition whispered, "Something is not right." She recalled how, over the past few months, James had become more guarded with his phone. He seemed perpetually lost in text messages, and the typical guiltless jokes he used to crack were replaced by a distant silence. Late-night business meetings became the norm. Then, a rumor reached her through a friend of a friend. James had been seen smiling intimately at a socialite named Vanessa Delgado, a name Emily recognized from society gatherings. Vanessa Delgado was known for her beauty and cunning. She was rumored to have ended at least 2 high-profile marriages in the past. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces clicked into place, but Emily tried to deny it. Maybe James was simply networking. Maybe the rumors were misguided. She still, against her better judgment, tried to believe in her husband. Yet a seed of doubt had been planted in her mind, and over the coming weeks, that doubt would bloom into a torment, overshadowing any bright hope for her future. Instead of discovering the wonders of motherhood with a loving partner, Emily found herself alone, scared and overshadowed by the cold demands of James's empire and the potential presence of another woman. Little did Emily know, this was only the beginning of the heartbreak she was destined to endure. Before James built his corporate empire, he was just a determined, bright-eyed college graduate from a middle-class neighborhood. He studied business administration at a small college near Springfield, Illinois. His father, Harold Thompson, had worked shifts at a local plant to support James through school. Family legend said James's mother died giving birth to him, and Harold had raised him as a single parent with unwavering devotion. James often cited his father's work ethic as the bedrock of his success. After Harold's death, when James was still in his mid-20s, he threw himself into entrepreneurial pursuits. His early business ventures quickly earned him the label of a savvy go-getter. At first, success was slow, but once he landed a contract with a major tech giant to develop specialized software, Thompson Innovations was born. Everything soared from that point. Within a couple of years, James's face started appearing in business magazines. He introduced new branches into e-commerce, real estate, and even a fledgling couture line. Emily first encountered James at a charity gala for underprivileged youth. She was there as part of her work with the Children's Future Foundation, a non-profit she had volunteered with since her college days. The moment James saw her, he seemed genuinely intrigued, not by the glitzy environment or the wealthy patrons, but by Emily's sincerity. That night, Emily wore a simple green gown borrowed from her friend Danielle. She felt out of place among the millionaires, while James glided through the crowd like a king greeting his subject. Yet he took her hand, introduced himself politely, and, after a conversation that stretched hours, walked her out to the parking lot. He offered her a ride in his limousine, but she politely declined, joking that she preferred her own beat-up sedan. James asked if they could meet again. Months later, they were inseparable. Their wedding, held at the estate of James's mentor, Richard Caldwell, was the talk of society columns. Yet, in the face of all the glitter, Emily remained the same humble woman. Her generosity and grounded nature was a large part of James's attraction to her. She was real in a world of superficial illusions. But time, success, and certain unsavory influences can warp even the strongest of hearts. As James's empire grew, so did the demands on his time and the thirst for more power. The quality that once made him so charming, his unstoppable ambition, began to devour his sense of responsibility at home. As board meetings stretched late into the night, Emily would be left alone, turning to philanthropic pursuits for solace. In the darkest parts of her mind, Emily wondered whether she had played a role in the distance forming between them. Had she not been supportive enough of James's career? Had her constant emphasis on charitable work irritated him? The thoughts plagued her when she dared to reflect on the fleeting moments of tension they had shared over the years. Their arguments about how James gave too much time to business and not enough to his wife became more frequent, overshadowing their once constant mutual respect. Still, the idea of him turning to another woman felt unimaginable. Once, on a rainy Wednesday evening, Emily found the courage to bring up the rumors swirling around society circles. James had come home reeking of cologne and top-shelf bourbon. His hair was disheveled, a smudge of lipstick faintly visible on his shirt collar. Emily felt her stomach clench with fear. "James," she said, bracing herself, "I've been hearing things about you and Vanessa Delgado. People are talking, saying you're always together, that you're—" She couldn't bring herself to finish the sentence. James reacted with quiet outrage. "I can't believe you'd listen to gossip. She's a business contact, that's all. She's well connected. Her father is a leading broker. This is purely professional." His words were clipped, his tone cold. Without another word, he stripped off his suit jacket and walked into the shower. There was no tenderness, no reassurance. Emily was left trembling by the living room couch, tears stinging her eyes. She remembered a line from her mother, Patricia, that real love never needed harsh words to defend itself. If James's heart was true, she reasoned, He would have gently coaxed her fears away, not attacked her for having them in the first place. But love, or what remained of it, rarely follows rules. Instead, it weaves illusions to mask darker truths. Emily clung to the hope that James was telling the truth, that the rumors were empty, and that she only needed to be patient. She was certain the baby, once born, would bring them closer. Yet in the back of her mind, she could not ignore the mounting evidence that James was slipping further away. In the weeks that followed, Emily's suspicions continued to escalate, despite her attempts to quell them with logic. Late-night phone calls, cryptic messages, and hastily deleted texts fed the growing darkness in her heart. Friends warned her to confront the issue head-on, but every time she tried, James responded with anger or dismissiveness. The man who once held her in bed to watch the sunrise now barely touched her, let alone treated her with affection. One afternoon, as Emily sat down at the expansive dining table to review philanthropic accounts, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Maria Hernandez, a close friend and fellow philanthropist who had known Emily since high school. Maria's text read, "I hate being the bearer of bad news, but I saw James at the Green Lounge last night. He was with Vanessa Delgado holding hands." Emily's heart pounded. She stared at the words on her phone for a solid minute, her pulse thundering in her ears. The Green Lounge was an exclusive venue, known for its intimate atmosphere and discreet staff. If James was seen there, it was not business. Business deals happened at offices, restaurants, or possibly clubs, but never in such a notoriously romantic spot. Emily placed a hand on her growing belly, feeling a flurry of anxious movements from her unborn child. She whispered an apology to the tiny life inside her, hoping beyond all reason that her child wouldn't feel the emotional upheaval tearing her apart. That night, Emily forced herself to wait up. Midnight passed without any sign of James. By 2 a.m, she felt the weight of exhaustion pulling at her. Near 3, she finally heard the front door open. She reached for the lamp beside her, switching on the soft light. James froze in the entrance to their bedroom, his expression a mixture of guilt and annoyance at finding her awake. "Emily, why are you still up?" he asked curtly. She swallowed, trying to stabilize her voice. "I was waiting for you. We need to talk." James tossed his keys onto a nearby dresser. His hair, which was usually neatly styled, hung loose around his face. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, and the faint smell of whiskey drifted from him. "It's late. Whatever it is, can't it wait?" Emily shook her head. "No, it can't." She clasped her hands together in her lap, then looked up, meeting his gaze. "People are talking, James. Last night, you were at the Green Lounge with Vanessa Delgado. Maria saw you two together." For a moment, James stiffened, then his features tightened into a scowl. "Since when do you trust rumors and prying friends over me?" He stepped closer, and Emily could see a flicker of something defensive in his eyes. "Vanessa is a potential investor. She's connected to her father's real estate empire. We met to discuss an upcoming partnership." Emily's voice shook with hurt. "So you had to hold her hand to finalize the terms?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, for God's sake, Emily, there was no hand-holding. People misinterpret anything they see." A single tear escaped down Emily's cheek. Part of her yearned to believe him. She felt her voice trembling under the weight of heartbreak. "I'm pregnant with our child. I need you to be honest with me. If there's something going on, if it's more than business, I at least deserve the truth." James's eyes darted away, and the silence in the room stretched out like an iron wall between them. When he finally spoke, his tone was clipped. "I'm exhausted," he said, not denying or confirming anything. "We can talk about this later." He moved past her, fumbling with his shirt collar as he made his way into the bathroom, shutting the door behind him. Emily remained on the edge of the bed, tears streaming silently down her face, feeling more alone than she had ever felt. Over the subsequent days, James skillfully sidestepped her attempts to probe deeper. Whenever she wanted to talk, he was either at the office or claimed he had a phone conference. She watched him retreat behind a fortress of half-truths, leaving her alone in a mansion that now felt more like a prison. That was when the nightmares began. Emily would wake up in a cold sweat, images of James and Vanessa together playing on a loop in her mind. She dreamed of being deserted in a hospital room, giving birth alone, crying out for a husband who never came. She tried to hide these fears from friends, but her mother, Patricia, sensed something was off. "What's troubling you, sweetheart?" Patricia asked during a lunch meeting, concern heavy in her voice. But Emily evaded, only offering vague reassurances. "I'm fine, Mom," she lied. "Just the usual nerves that come with pregnancy." For the moment, that was the story Emily stuck to, not wanting to reveal the crumbling foundation of her marriage. She feared that admitting the truth would make it real, something she would be forced to confront head-on. Deep down, she already suspected the truth was unstoppable. But she clung to a hope that, if given enough time, James might come to his senses. Sometimes, illusions of hope are the only threads that keep a person going. And Emily held on with all her strength, too terrified to let go. As Emily's pregnancy entered its third trimester, the once subtle signs of James's infidelity became glaring. He was gone 3-4 nights a week without explanation, returning with lame excuses about urgent meetings or potential investors. It was never a conversation. It was a monologue James delivered on his way from the door to the shower. Emily, her belly now noticeably round, felt as though she no longer existed in his world. Even the staff noticed the tension. Their housekeeper, Anna Martinez, tried to keep quiet, but concern showed in her eyes. Every time she offered Emily a cup of tea, the security guard, Marcus, who had worked at the estate for a decade, asked discreetly if everything was all right. Emily forced a smile each time, unwilling to share her humiliation with anyone else. But the heaviness in the air was undeniable. She needed answers. The question tormented her day and night. Why wasn't James willing to admit to the affair or come clean about his feelings? Was he truly content with a double life, a pregnant wife at home and a glamorous mistress at night? Desperate for some semblance of the truth, Emily decided to confront someone who might have insider knowledge, James's personal assistant, Daniel Woodward. He had been with Thompson Innovations for years and was fiercely loyal to James. But Emily suspected he would at least offer some small hint of what was really going on. One late afternoon, when the house was notably quiet, Emily managed to catch Daniel in the foyer. He was carrying a file with Thompson Innovations logo on it. With the boldness of a woman pushed to her limits, Emily cornered him. "Daniel," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "could I ask you something? And please be honest with me." Daniel glanced around as though worried about hidden cameras. After verifying they were alone, he nodded politely. "Of course, Miss S. Thompson. What can I help you with?" Emily sucked in a shaky breath, placing a protective hand on her belly. "I need to know what's going on with my husband and Vanessa Delgado. Is there something I should know? I'm asking you because you handle all his schedules and appointments." Daniel hesitated, his face tightening. "Miss S. Thompson, it's really not my place. Mr. Thompson's personal life. Well, it's not for me to meddle." Frustration surged inside her, but she tried to keep calm. "I'm not asking you to meddle. I just want to know if my husband has been honest with me. He says it's business, but the late hours, the private dinners..." Daniel pursed his lips. "Look, Mr. Thompson is meeting with Miss Delgado frequently, it's true. She has connections with international real estate developers who could be critical to the next phase of expansions. However," he trailed off, clearly torn. "However," Emily prompted, her voice trembling. Daniel inhaled slowly. "Let's just say the lines between personal and professional seem blurred. I've been asked to make arrangements at hotels that aren't usual meeting spots. I've witnessed, well, interactions that felt more like date nights than negotiations. His eyes clouded with sympathy. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. I wish I had better news. Emily felt her knees weaken and she gripped the banister for support. A swirl of dizziness overtook her, and Daniel rushed to offer a steady hand. She clutched his arm until the wave of vertigo passed. Her heart seemed to shrink in her chest. The final illusions shattered. The rumors, the sightings, the strange excuses, everything was confirmed in a few sentences of reluctant honesty. Her tears welled up, but she fought them back. She whispered, "Thank you for telling me the truth, Daniel." Then she turned and walked up the grand staircase, each step heavier than the last, as though she were ascending the gallows rather than returning to her room. Later that night, alone in her bedroom, Emily sat on the floor with her back against the bed frame, hugging a throw pillow. The quiet hum of air conditioning mocked the storm raging inside her. She replayed Daniel's words again and again. No matter how she passed it, the meaning was the same. James was openly, perhaps even shamelessly, continuing an affair with Vanessa Delgado. At times she felt a flicker of fury. She had sacrificed so much for James. They had built a life together that was supposed to be about giving back, nurturing each other, and raising a family in love. Instead, he had reduced their marriage to an empty facade while he pursued thrills with another woman. Emily wanted to scream, but no sound emerged. She wanted to throw things, but her arms felt too heavy. She quietly whispered an apology to her unborn child for the emotional chaos swirling around them both. She had once believed her baby would be born into a love-filled home with two parents who adored each other. Now, it felt like a broken promise. That same night, Emily made a pledge to herself. If James would not end this deception, she would end it for him. She deserved better, and so did their child. If confrontation was all that was left, she would take it. Yet, as with all matters of the heart, the path forward would not be so straightforward. Fate, it seemed, had more trials in store for Emily and for James as well. James Thompson was not as invulnerable as he appeared to the outside world. Beneath his polished veneer, cracks were forming in his empire. Whispers in the business community hinted that Thompson Innovations might be overextending itself. Unfavorable market shifts in Europe threatened to jeopardize large investments. Competition in the technology sector was fierce, and the real estate arm of his business required enormous capital with no immediate return. Deep down, James was terrified that everything he had built would come crashing down. Fueling these fears was Vanessa Delgado. She was not just a fleeting affair, a mere dalliance. Vanessa had grown up in the world of high society as well. Her father, Arturo Delgado, owned Delgado Realty International, a heavyweight in global property development. Vanessa's cunning nature allowed her to read James's insecurities and exploit them. If James needed capital, connections, or a strategic alliance to shield his empire from collapse, she assured him she could provide it all under one condition: he remain at her beck and call, personally and professionally. Initially, James justified the time he spent with Vanessa as a necessary measure for his business. Then he justified the flirtations as part of negotiating. Before he knew it, he had fallen headlong into an affair. Her lavish praise and willingness to feed his ego offered a reprieve from the pressure at home. Emily, in his eyes, had become too focused on moral obligations and philanthropic responsibilities. With Vanessa, he could talk about the real world of big deals and the hard truths of cutthroat success. Still, a kernel of guilt gnawed at him. In quiet moments, usually in the early morning hours, he would reflect on how distant and cold he had been to Emily, his once beloved wife. She was pregnant with his child, and he felt oddly disconnected from that reality. Every time he tried to push the guilt aside, it pushed back harder. but it was easier to rationalize or ignore than to face the consequences. Ultimately, James convinced himself that the affair would remain a secret, that Emily would never truly find out, and that once everything settled in his empire, he could set things right. It was a delusion, but one he clung to like a lifeline. What James did not realize was that Emily had found the truth. His time was running out. 2 weeks after Emily's fateful conversation with Daniel, she found herself pacing the marble floors of the foyer, adrenaline pumping through her veins. Her plan was simple and direct. She would confront James with what she knew, demand an end to the affair, and if he refused, she would leave. In the back of her mind, she played out different scenarios. Maybe he'd deny it. Maybe he'd confess. Perhaps he'd grow angry, or perhaps something else entirely. She just knew she couldn't continue living in this torture. It was nearly midnight when James arrived. Emily, prepared for a confrontation, clutched a folder in her hands, a folder containing screen captures of text messages between James and Vanessa that Daniel had discreetly forwarded to her. In those messages, the pair openly discussed meeting times, hotel room details, and even references to an upcoming trip out of state. The final piece of her broken heart was reading the affection in their words. "Can't wait to see you, darling." The door swung open, and James entered, looking worn and tense. When he saw Emily, folder in hand, waiting for him in the foyer, he paused. "What's this?" he demanded, his voice tight. Emily swallowed her fear. "We're going to talk right here, right now." James exhaled. "I'm really not in the mood for one of your interrogations, Emily." Despite her racing heart, she shoved the folder forward. "You're going to want to see these before you accuse me of anything." James's gaze flicked to the folder. He hesitated, then opened it. His eyes flared in anger as he skimmed the messages. "Where did you?" he began, but Emily cut him off. "It doesn't matter where I got them," she said, her voice trembling with equal parts rage and sorrow. "All that matters is that these messages prove what I've suspected for months. You're having an affair with Vanessa Delgado." Silence choked the foyer. Emily watched as James set his jaw. He looked at her with something akin to desperation, but also defiance. I don't need to explain myself to you," he finally said, though the words sounded hollow. He knew he was caught. There was no plausible denial left. Emily's eyes glistened with tears, but her voice rang firm. "I'm your wife, James. I'm the mother of your unborn child. If not me, who do you owe an explanation?" He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Things got complicated, Emily. The business is in a rough spot. Vanessa is. She's well connected. She helped keep a few major deals afloat when no one else could. I needed her." He emphasized that last line, as if it justified the betrayal. Emily's voice cracked. "Don't you dare try to spin it as if you had no choice. This was never just business. You have no idea how humiliating it's been to walk around this house every day, carrying your child, while the world gossips about you and another woman. Do you think I deserve that?" James set the folder down on a side table, glancing away, visibly torn. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you have no idea the pressure I've been under, deals falling through, expansions on the brink of failure." Vanessa stepped in with her father's capital. It wasn't just about personal attraction. Anger flared in Emily's chest. "So you sold your fidelity, your marriage, for capital?" She choked back a sob. "If you wanted an open marriage, you should have had the guts to say so. Instead, you lied to my face. You've left me alone, pregnant, and worried every single day whether you'd come home." James's eyes flicked to her belly. For the briefest moment, regret softened his features. "Emily, I do love you," he whispered. I've made mistakes, and I got in too deep. I couldn't see a way out." Emily shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want your half-hearted apologies. I don't want your excuses. If you want this marriage to survive, if you care about our child, end it with Vanessa. cut ties. Close whatever deals need closing, but do it without an affair. He stared at her. An unspoken tension lingered, as though he was weighing the benefits and consequences. At last, James inhaled a ragged breath. "All right," he said, "I'll end it. But it's not that simple. If I abruptly cut off Vanessa, her father might pull out of the deals. That could ruin me, ruin everything we've built." Emily felt her stomach churn. "You'd rather risk your marriage than your business?" "I'm saying we need a plan," James said, exasperation creeping into his voice. "There's more at stake here than just emotions. I can't put Thompson Innovations in jeopardy without a backup strategy." In that moment, Emily realized how far James had fallen from the man she once knew. His empire, his ambition, his pride, these things, trumped the well-being of his wife and child. She glared at him, trembling. "I'm not waiting for you to find a backup strategy for our marriage. I am not an investment." She turned on her heel and started up the stairs. He called after her, but she didn't slow down. Retreating into her bedroom, she locked the door, ignoring James's pleas for her to open it. She finally collapsed onto the bed, sobbing uncontrollably, wondering how they had reached this point. The child in her womb fluttered, a gentle reminder of innocence amidst the chaos. That night, Emily decided the next step. If James truly ended things with Vanessa and reclaimed the moral compass he once had, then perhaps they could rebuild. If not, Emily would have to leave for her own sake and that of her child. She made a promise to herself, "Never again will I beg for the love and loyalty of someone who discards me." Little did she know that a series of far more dramatic events would soon spin her life in a direction she could never have anticipated. Vanessa Delgado was not one to retreat quietly. When James, guilt-ridden and pressed by Emily's ultimatum, tentatively mentioned ending their personal relationship, Vanessa responded with a deceptively sweet smile. She reassured him that she understood and even pretended to respect his dedication to his family. In that moment, James felt a surge of relief, naively hoping that Vanessa would gracefully bow out. But behind Vanessa's composed facade, a storm of rage brewed. She had invested time, effort, and even some of her own cunning to ensure James's business expansions were tied closely to her father's empire. They were integrated now in a web of high-level negotiations. She had seduced James mentally and physically so thoroughly that the line between business and personal had all but vanished. For Vanessa, James was an asset as well as a conquest, and she was not about to relinquish him without a fight. Over the next few days, she launched a counter-offensive. Without overt threats, she hinted that Delgado Realty International could withdraw from key deals, potentially exposing Thompson Innovations to ruin. For every retreat James made, she advanced 2 steps. She invited him to last meetings that turned suspiciously intimate. She texted him at all hours, claiming urgent deadlines and showing up in seductive attire. James found himself caught between a furious wife at home and a manipulative mistress, whose father wielded enormous financial power. In a moment of desperation, James had a tense meeting with Daniel, his personal assistant. "We need to find a way to complete the projects and pay off the necessary debts without Delgado Realty," James confided. "I can't keep playing this game." Daniel, always the voice of reason, sighed. "That might be difficult, Mr. Thompson. The partnerships with Delgado Realty are already locked in. Pulling out mid-project could cost a fortune and lead to lawsuits." James buried his head in his hands. "Emily wants me to end it. God knows I need to. I've made a royal mess of everything." Daniel swallowed. "Could you negotiate a settlement with Delgado Realty, something that frees you from their financial hold?" James nodded slowly. "It's worth a shot. I'll talk to Richard Caldwell about bridging finances." Richard Caldwell, his mentor, was wealthy in his own right, though not at the scale of Delgado. Still, it might be enough to buy James some leverage. The sense of relief that plan offered was ephemeral, but it was hope all the same. Vanessa, however, was always 2 steps ahead. She learned through her own channels that James was seeking alternative financing. If he succeeded, she would lose her leverage. She responded with a new plan: blackmail. Late one night, James was awakened by his phone buzzing. A message from Vanessa read, "Meet me at suite 1509 of the Street Regis Hotel tomorrow night, or else our little secrets become public." James's stomach churned as he read. He was well aware of Vanessa's cunning nature. He also had no doubt she possessed photos, texts, or perhaps more damaging evidence of their affair. She could leak them to the press or, worse, present them to Emily in the most humiliating way possible. Right now, James teetered on the brink of financial collapse. A highly public scandal might be the final straw, leading investors and partners to lose faith in Thompson Innovations entirely. Torn between humiliating personal failure and professional disaster, James felt cornered. His solution, once again, was to lie, this time to Emily. He told her he had to attend last-minute negotiations out of state and hopped on a private flight to meet Vanessa in secret, hoping to bribe her into silence. What he didn't know was that Emily, fed up with the runaround, had discovered the truth of his location from one of Daniel's slip-ups. Armed with the knowledge of where James was headed, she prepared for a confrontation that would forever change the course of their lives. It was the quiet hours of the night when Emily arrived at the Street Regis Hotel, her pregnant frame draped in a simple overcoat to conceal her identity from prying eyes. She had debated long and hard about her next step. Was it worth risking more heartbreak to chase James to this illicit rendezvous? In the end, she concluded that she needed closure, even if it tore her apart. She refused to remain a silent victim. Emily took the elevator to the 15th floor, her heart hammered in her chest. She found suite 1509, and before her courage evaporated, she knocked. The door creaked open, revealing James's shocked face. "Emily?" he said, voice hushed. He glanced behind him, and Emily caught a glimpse of Vanessa in a tight red dress, perched on the bed, glass of champagne in hand. The scene was every bit the cliché she had feared. Vanessa's eyes widened at the sight of Emily. "Well, look who's here," she purred, slowly standing up. "Shouldn't you be at home, dear, resting? You're eating for 2 now." Emily ignored Vanessa's sarcasm. She stepped into the suite, her voice trembling with righteous fury. "I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the secrecy, the humiliation. I came here tonight because I refuse to let you two destroy everything I've worked for." James tried to place a calming hand on Emily's shoulder, but she jerked away. "Emily, let me explain." She rounded on him. "You have nothing to explain," she hissed, tears welling. "I see it. I see everything. You lied to me over and over again. I gave you a chance. I told you to choose. And you're here with her." Vanessa chuckled. "Oh, don't be so melodramatic. James is a grown man. He can make his own decisions." Emily locked eyes with Vanessa. "Decisions, right? And you think you can blackmail him into staying with you? You might get a temporary thrill, but I promise you it'll be hollow. He'll never truly love you, and we all know it." Vanessa's lips curled into a sneer. "This is adorable, truly. The long-suffering wife confronting the evil mistress." She flicked her gaze toward James. "Tell her what's really going on, James. Tell her about the deals, the money, and all the reasons you still need me." James's face was ashen. He looked from Vanessa to Emily, torn between terror and guilt. "I don't need this," he muttered, running a hand over his face. "I can't handle this." He took a step toward Emily, lowering his voice. "Listen, I came here to find a way out. Vanessa threatened to go public with evidence of our affair if I ended things. I was." Emily felt the sting of heartbreak again. "So you were trying to end it?" Vanessa cut in. "He was. But that's before I told him about the massive trouble he'd be in if Delgado Realty pulled out of his expansions. Not just financially either. We have politicians in our pocket, James. You know that. A few well-placed rumors, some allegations of fraud, and your entire empire, your name, would be tarnished. I doubt even your philanthropic wife here would stand by you then. Emily stared at them both, revolted. And this is the life you chose, James? A life of blackmail and fear? James couldn't meet her gaze. I never meant for it to get this far. Emily, I'm sorry. A bitter laugh escaped Emily's lips. You're not just sorry. You're weak. You sold your soul to keep your business afloat. Our marriage, our child, everything just a footnote in your pursuit of power. She placed a trembling hand on her belly. You know what? I've seen enough. She turned to leave, but her foot stumbled against the edge of the coffee table, and pain shot through her. She collapsed to her knees, gasping as a sharp contraction seized her abdomen. James darted forward, kneeling beside her. Emily! Vanessa rolled her eyes, though she appeared slightly concerned. Is she faking it? Emily groaned, clutching her belly. No, something's not right. Another wave of pain tore through her. She felt a trickle of fluid along her inner thigh. In that moment, her greatest fear came to life. She was going into labor prematurely. James sprang into action. Vanessa, call an ambulance, he barked. Vanessa hesitated, thrown off by the urgency in his tone. Then she grabbed the phone and dialed. James gathered Emily into his arms, softly stroking her hair as her face contorted in pain. Breathe, Emily, he whispered, tears in his eyes. I'm here. In the confusion that followed, James realized the stark reality of what was happening. His pregnant wife, the woman he had disregarded for months, was suddenly in crisis right before his eyes. Guilt and fear clashed violently in his mind. He looked up at Vanessa, who stood awkwardly with the phone to her ear, and realized none of it mattered, none of the deals, the expansions, the illusions of grandeur. Emily and the baby were the only things that truly mattered. Soon, paramedics burst through the suite door, loaded Emily onto a stretcher, and rushed her out. James followed, leaving Vanessa alone in the room with a cold expression on her face. Champagne glass still on the nightstand. No one said a word as the ambulance tore through the night. Emily's vision blurred from the pain and fear. She heard only the frantic beeping of medical equipment and James's trembling voice. Stay with me, Emily. Please, God, let them both be all right. The chaos of the night ended in the sterile corridors of St. Florence Hospital. Emily was rushed into the emergency ward, where doctors confirmed that she was experiencing premature labor. Tension hung in the air as James paced outside the operating room, tears staining his cheeks. He pressed his hands against the wall, praying silently, promising himself he would forsake everything if only Emily and the baby survived. After hours of agonizing uncertainty, a doctor emerged. James hurried over. Mr. Thompson, your wife is stable, but we had to perform an emergency C-section to deliver your baby. It's a girl. The news momentarily stole James's breath. A daughter. He was a father, but the doctor's grave expression quickly stifled any joy. Your daughter is in the neonatal intensive care unit. She's underweight and will need critical monitoring. Miss S. Thompson lost a significant amount of blood, but we believe she'll recover. The doctor placed a gentle hand on James's shoulder. She's been asking for you. James entered Emily's room with trembling steps. Machines beeped softly. Emily lay pale on the bed, her eyes fluttering open when she sensed his presence. Her first words were not an accusation or a plea, but a question laced with worry. The baby? Is our baby okay? He took her hand, tears forming again. She's in the NICU. The doctors are doing everything they can. She's beautiful, Emily. A faint, tired smile appeared on Emily's lips, quickly replaced by anguish. I was so scared, she whispered. I felt so alone. James lowered his head. "I'm sorry, Emily. I've been horrible. I got lost in my ambition and ended up hurting you, hurting our family. None of it matters to me anymore, just you and the baby." Emily closed her eyes, exhaustion overwhelming her. Words mean nothing without action, James. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know, I'll prove it. I promise I'll fix this." In the days that followed, James took a leave of absence from Thompson Innovations, delegating responsibilities to his board members. He camped at the hospital day and night, ensuring Emily had whatever she needed. When their tiny daughter, whom Emily named Rose, remained under careful watch in the NICU, James found himself standing at the incubator for hours, softly singing lullabies to a child who might not yet hear him fully. In these quiet, tender moments, he realized how wrong his priorities had been. Meanwhile, Vanessa Delgado wasted no time letting the rumor mill run wild. She appeared at events without James, sporting a scorned expression and dropping cryptic hints about unprofessional behavior at Thompson Innovations. Some tabloids speculated about the scandal, but James ignored them. His entire focus was on Emily and Rose. As Emily recovered, she found her anger toward James warring with the empathy stirred by seeing him so broken. His heartfelt remorse seemed real, his presence unwavering. Yet trust is not something that can be repaired with a few acts of kindness. Emily kept a guarded heart, offering him only the minimal acceptance her healing process allowed. One afternoon, Emily asked James to wheel her down to the NICU so she could see Rose. The baby was hooked up to monitors and tubes, fighting bravely for each breath. Emily's tears flowed freely as she whispered to her child. James set a hand on Emily's shoulder, his own eyes brimming with tears. "I promise you," he murmured, to both Emily and Rose, "I'll protect you from now on." At that moment, Emily's heart softened enough to nod. "We'll see," she whispered. "For Rose's sake, I hope you mean it. But forging a path forward would be a rocky road of redemption and healing." The betrayal Emily endured could not vanish overnight. This was the price James would pay to slowly earn the trust he had so callously discarded. And as Emily recovered, she found her own heart torn between the love she still felt deep within and the lingering scars of James's betrayal. Weeks passed, and Rose gradually grew stronger, thanks to diligent medical care and her parents' constant vigilance. Emily was released from the hospital first, though she insisted on visiting Rose daily. James accompanied her, pushing her wheelchair through the hospital halls, a routine that offered them both a surprising sense of comfort. They shared moments of quiet reflection, discussing potential futures for their daughter, reminiscing about better days in their marriage, and acknowledging the painful reality that they might not stay together. At home, James insisted Emily take the master bedroom while he slept in a separate room, an unspoken gesture of penance. During the lonely evenings, he wrestled with the fallout of his actions. His brand had suffered hits from negative press, though not as devastating as he had initially feared. He suspected Vanessa deliberately dangled the threat of ruin without fully executing it, perhaps to keep him uncertain about her next move. The day finally came when Rose was well enough to come home. Emily's mother, Patricia, flew in from Chicago, tears of joy in her eyes as she held her fragile granddaughter. For a few magical hours, the tension melted away, replaced by the warmth of new life. Emily and James stood side by side, watching baby Rose sleep in her crib, a fleeting glimpse of the family they could have been. But real life soon intruded. Emily had more energy now, and with that came clarity about her situation. She asked James to sit with her in the sunroom, a bright space overlooking the mansion's gardens, where they once drank coffee in happier times. The late afternoon sunlight cast patterns on the table as Emily, her voice trembling, began. "I've decided that I need space, James, real space. This can't go on like nothing happened." I've spoken to an attorney about a legal separation. He looked as though she had struck him. Emily, please. We can go to counseling. I know I betrayed your trust, but let me try to make it right. I won't see Vanessa again ever. I know you won't, but it's not just about Vanessa. It's about the lies, the neglect, the fact that you risked our child's future so you could preserve your business empire. I want to forgive you, but I can't do that if we're in the same house with all these memories haunting me. I need a chance to heal on my own terms. James exhaled, a broken look in his eyes. Where will you go? My mother's. She's already prepared a room. She'll help me care for Rose until I'm stable emotionally and financially. She glanced at Rose, sleeping nearby. I'm not asking for a divorce yet, James, but I need you to respect this boundary. His throat bobbed as he fought back tears. I understand, he finally said. I'll do anything to help. Financially, you'll be secure. I promise. Emily nodded. Thank you. She paused, struggling with emotions she could barely articulate. Part of me still loves you, James, and that's what makes this so painful. But we can't pretend the past months never happened. I have to see if we can rebuild trust at all. When Emily left for Chicago with Rose and Patricia, James stood in the driveway, watching the car pull away. It was the first time in years he felt truly alone in his own mansion. He spent the next weeks pouring himself into therapy sessions, confiding in Richard Caldwell, and drafting a plan to regain independence from Delgado Realty. He knew that if there was any chance of a future with Emily, he needed a clean slate. Rumors swirled that Vanessa Delgado had flown overseas, taking up with another wealthy executive. Perhaps she had found a new conquest, or maybe she wanted to avoid legal scrutiny. James took it as a sign that he had an opportunity to extricate himself from her father's influence for good. Months passed in a delicate dance of distance and guarded reconciliation. Emily, from her mother's home, watched James's efforts from afar. He was consistent with child support, visited Rose twice a month, and showed genuine remorse. They spoke on the phone occasionally, their conversations gentle and carefully navigated. A year later, Emily attended a charity event in Chicago, a cause close to her heart, supporting premature infants and their families. She sat at a table, greeting donors and sharing her experiences with Rose's early struggles. Suddenly, she looked up to see James approaching. He had donated a sizable sum to the foundation and wanted to support Emily's philanthropic passions. Heart-hammering, Emily invited him to sit. They spoke of Rose, who was now a healthy toddler, exploring the world with bright eyes. They reminisced, tears glistening in Emily's eyes as she admitted how much she wanted to do better for their daughter. James, quietly earnest, confessed he had been in therapy, re-evaluating his priorities, vowing never to lose sight of what truly mattered. In that moment, for the first time since everything fell apart, Emily felt a small spark of genuine hope. She reached across the table, laying her hand over his. One step at a time, James, she whispered. We'll see where it goes, for Rose's sake and maybe for ours. No grand gestures or sweeping declarations followed. Just two people, scarred by betrayal and driven by a love they hoped to salvage, willing to put in the work day by day. Time would tell if they could navigate the rocky road back to each other, but one thing was certain: Emily was no longer alone, and James, having stared into the abyss of losing everything, finally understood what mattered most in life. As for Vanessa Delgado, her chapter in their story had closed. Perhaps the damage she inflicted would forever leave scars, but it also forced them to confront truths that might one day yield a stronger foundation if they both had the courage to build it. From the gilded halls of a luxurious mansion to the stark emergency of a hospital room, Emily's journey reminds us of the delicate balance between love, loyalty, and ambition. Her unwavering resolve to protect her child and eventually to heal herself highlights the power of courage in the face of betrayal. James, blinded by ambition, learned the hardest lesson of all. No empire is worth sacrificing the people who matter most. Will their new beginnings endure? Or will the ghosts of infidelity and heartbreak persist in the shadows? Only time will tell if love can truly conquer the scars left behind. If you found this story gripping, please show your support by liking this video, sharing it with friends who crave powerful drama, and subscribing to our channel for more engrossing tales of love, betrayal, and redemption. Your engagement helps us bring more stories to life. Thank you for watching.